So anyhow, I'm Lisa, do sales here, have a certain region and accounts that I manage for 360 Suite. So if you want to buy anything from today, you can call me. That's why I'm here. Also, I'm joined by Pauline Lancaster. She is one of our senior pre-sales engineers. And in this session, again, like Bruno said, we're going to review our 10-step methodology and how 360 Suite is integrated into that for your migrations, maybe moving to the cloud for business objects, upgrades and updates. And even if you're moving your databases like from Oracle to HANA or to Snowflake. And this methodology, it's not just some puffy content that our creative marketing team came up with. This has been refined and collaborated with maybe hundreds of our customers over the past 5 years. So that maybe that the 10-step that we had a few years ago looks a little bit different than what it does today, because we're constantly tweaking it and making sure it's actually how it's being utilized out there amongst our customers. And our end goal was to essentially provide you with a DIY methodology. Kind of helps you do more with less and saves you time and money. So again, this is our infographic of the whole process that we'll go through. Again, with Pauline, she'll be the technical person. So ask any of your questions in the chat that you may have. But we're going to take it from, the preparation all the way to step number 10, when everything is done and everyone's happy because you've upgraded and you're in your new version. Where do we go next, Pauline? Here we go.
We have a poll here first to get going.
Yeah. So, what is your most challenging migration or upgrade issue that you experience? And we don't see the answers yet, Pauline. There we go. If you can, take a moment. We'd like to see that you are all still awake there. So let us know, what is one of the most challenging things you experience when you're doing one of these migrations or upgrades? Is it your planning portion, maybe the cleanup, regression testing, performance testing, all of the above, or none of the above because you're a 360 Suite user? So there we go. Give you a minute or so to answer that. And can you see if the questions or the answers are coming in, Pauline?
Yep. Everybody's looks like everybody's still awake and everybody's voting, so that's good. We'll just give a couple more seconds and want to get a few more people an opportunity to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like it's been a minute now. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll now. And we can share the results. It might be of interest to a lot of you.
What do we have here? Our winner is all of the above, but that comes in as we thought would happen. The regression and performance testing is always a huge pain for everybody. But then with the planning and the cleanup, and then we've got some customers on the line too. None of the above. So that's awesome. So yeah, we'll get into some of this and show you how we can help fix some of these to where maybe we'll have everyone at 100% of none of the above on the 360 Suite user. Here we go. And first step. So very first step, of course, this is our preparation. First step is to kind of determine what you need to look at prior to your upgrade or migration. So Pauline, what kind of things do you need to do as part of this preparation, and how will we help? How can we help with this?
Yeah, so this first step is really to get an assessment of your environment. 360 Eyes is heavily used in this stage. So 360 Eyes extracts your metadata about your business objects environment, extracts auditor, CMS, and file store all into one repository. So then you can do some analysis of that. There are 70 pre-built Webby reports that are available with Eyes so that you can start working on it right away, modify the reports if there are certain ways you want to see the data. being able to identify, what's being used, what's not being used, just really getting an assessment. And I like to show this example. This is a actual customer's document from 360i. So in 360i, there's a document that counts all of your inboxes, what's in public folders, what's in personal folders, gives you a document count, an instance count. A lot of customers, we ask them, how many documents do you have? Some know, most don't really know. I mean, you can get a breakdown in this, you can get a count in the CMC, but you really don't get a breakdown of where the content really is. In this example, they had a lot in user folders, a lot of inboxes. So what they did was, kind of see, okay, do we need all of this content? Where is it being used? How long has it been there? So if any of you have long, environments that have been around for a long time, in this case, this environment had been around at least 8 years. So over time, the, content grows, users create new Webby reports. It's Webby's great, it gives you the ability to create any ad hoc reports as needed, but a lot of times, that causes the environment to grow over time. So this is, a good way to kind of figure out where you're starting with and prepare for where you want to go.
Got it. Okay, so, oops, my computer is dinging me. Turn that off. The next portion would be with the evaluation stage. And this is, again, where 360i's, your BI and BI comes into play. So within these reports that you can get from 360i's, Pauline, what are some of the data that you're going to see here? What is different to maybe the house you may normally approach this? What are you going to get?
Yeah, so in the evaluate stage, this is really, so once you've prepared, you kind of get an assessment of your environment. Now you're going to see, okay, well, where are you going? Has your environment been increasing? I'm just going to show some of the reports that are helpful with 360i's, if I can log in here. So, are you increasing usage? Do you have more users logging into the system? So there are a few reports that are really helpful. There's a session peak. So taking a look at, are your users going up, the amount of users logging in, is that increasing over time? So in this example, you see ours is actually decreasing, but yours may be increasing. So do you need to plan for that? Do you need to maybe, consider clustering your servers, adding a new node to this, cluster? What's the trend for your environment? Another document that's pretty useful is looking at the CMS through time. So with 360i's, you get to keep snapshots of your environment, which allows you to see, okay, what are the trends? So are my user logins increasing? So, I've added a lot of users to the system, but are they actually logging in? So in our case, it's actually gone down. In your case, is that going up? Do we need to plan for increased usage? Maybe they've been there all along, and all of a sudden there's a new more interest in the BI tool in business objects. Are your document counts going up? Your instance counts? You'll see in this case, looks like we did some cleanup and they've gone down, but are they increasing? So this is really just evaluating your content and the usage, what's being used, what's not being used. Being able to combine that information in Auditor. A lot of you say, well, I know it's being used. And yeah, you with Auditor, you can see what's being used. But if you have documents in your environment that aren't being used, they're never going to show up on an audit report. Whereas with 360i's, you get that full picture of your usage and non-usage.
Yeah. Which is key for one of the next steps that we move into.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So this would be the backup and cleanup. So now, of course, you want to hope for the best, but you've got to plan for the worst. So backing everything up is going to be a critical step here. So Pauline, and with our backup capability, how different is it? And it's done with 360 plus, but how different is that from how you may do that with business objects out of the box? How do we have a more powerful solution for this?
Yeah, so traditionally, what most people do when they're backing up business objects, they back up their CMS repository, so that's the database level. They back up their file store, those need to be in sync, and if they need to restore something, they have to restore both the database and the file store to an environment. It could be the same environment, it could be another environment that has business objects installed, and they may, to do that for a folder or a universe that got corrupted is a lot of work. With 360 Plus, we do a full backup. Every single object gets its own buyer file, so behind the scenes, everything is backed up. It's an incremental backup. First time it runs, it does a full backup, and then the subsequent backups are just those objects that have been changed or added since the last backup. And what that gives you the ability to do is to restore individual objects. It doesn't require a network admin. It doesn't require a DBA. It doesn't require anyone but the business objects administrator to know where to go and restore that universe, that document, even the users. So if you do, if you delete users, so during your cleanup, I mean, we are a big proponent of cleaning up the environment before you move the content. You've got a large amount of content. You're going to the cloud. You want to pare down, streamline your environment. If you're going to another server, moving data centers, it's a really good opportunity to do some cleanup. But we want you to be able to restore if needed, and 360 Plus gives you that confidence to do that restore and quickly roll back if needed.
Right.
Um,
And that's good. And as you say, as you called it, the individual buyer files, I call it the beer file. And you're always like,
Correct.
Lisa,
Yes.
huh?
Everybody says it differently. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So those individual beer files that you can roll back if you need to. So, yeah. What's their next step we've got here? Part of the same stuff. Next slide.
Yeah. So this is the cleanup part. Yeah.
And you
Um,
actually wrote a pretty cool white paper or blog session on this where you likened this to, when you got ready to move, you're like, hey, I've got to move. And you started packing up all this junk that maybe you've not touched or had in years. So you're like, why should I move all this stuff from place to place? So let's do some cleanup. So it's very similar.
yes.
Here, yep. It's
Yes,
very
that's
well.
correct.
Thanks.
I did. Yes, I remember that blog post. I actually moved this crate 3 times. And my husband said it was very important stuff in that box, and I
Here.
finally opened it. I had to break it open. It was like this big crate, and it had old college textbooks in it. He was never going to read them. They were obsolete. They probably didn't even. So yeah, that I kind of see that as the same thing. Like, why are you going to move reports that no one's run in 3 years, or that they're just sitting in the environment? Because being able to pare down your environment, it's going to streamline it, make it run better, allow for your migrations, your backups, everything works better when you don't have a lot of, extra content in the environment. So yeah, users that have never connected, do they need to remain in the system? Inboxes, unused content, archiving instances. So we do have some customers that have a requirement to maintain instances. Those are going to be the largest files when you do a migration, when you're moving to the cloud or you're moving to another platform. Those files are large because they contain data. They're PDFs, they don't compress very well. So we have a solution where you can actually archive those instances. You move them out of the business objects environment. You can put them in a network location that's secured. And they're out there, so if anyone ever needs them, you maintain the requirement to keep them, but they're outside of the business objects environment, and you don't have to move them all over the place for the um, one-time need that maybe someone needs one PDF out of 100,000 that are in your environment. And here's just that same example that I shared is what one of our customers did when they did their cleanup. They established rules. So with their inboxes, they said, okay, anything older than 60 days, we don't want users working in an inbox like it's like a file store location. I mean, you can't, if you want to keep a report, you save it off. If you want to keep the data, you save it off. So they were able to actually decrease their inboxes by a significant amount. Same thing with user folders. They determined that any document that hasn't been run in 13 months, so if it's a yearly document, it hasn't been run 13 months, they want to delete it. So they reduced the instances and the documents in the user folders pretty significantly. And they were able to reduce their space, and that significantly helped when they were moving data centers. So from the East Coast to the West Coast, they had a data center in the West Coast, and that really improved the performance with their migration and pared down their system.
That's awesome. All right. So now we're at the level or the step to do promotion. So maybe you can explain this one a little bit, Pauline, what you're doing here and any particular order that you're going to do this in when you're promoting.
Okay. Yeah, so the promotion is really moving all that content. So whether you're going to the cloud, whether you've set up a new environment with 4.3, which actually we just heard is, I think it's coming out this Friday. So if any of you are considering moving to that when it comes out or once the first service pack's available, so moving all that content with the promotion management tool in the CMC is pretty cumbersome. If you were to select all of your content, I don't even know if there's an easy way to do it because you have to literally go through every folder, click, click, click to get all the subfolders. It typically will time out before it moves all the content. With 360 Plus, you can select everything. So your access levels, your users, your groups, everything gets selected. You don't have to do it in a particular order. It will get moved in the appropriate order so that the access levels and groups get moved first, so that once your content's moved, the appropriate security gets applied. You can choose to move the instances or not move the instances. And we've had customers that have tried to use the promotion management tool. They've had really, really great success using the uh, um, the promotion tool within 360 Plus because it works very differently behind the scenes. It's not going to time out. It's going to move all your content. I had a customer that they had 300,000 instances. They ran it for several days. It ran, moved all their content, and they were able to move forward with their migration.
Very good. What's up next? Okay, so now we're back to step 5, but it's backup and cleanup again. But this is phase 2. And I'm actually curious, how is this one different than our original backup and cleanup? What are we doing
Yeah,
here?
yeah. I mean, this is really for the customers that we've had some customers where we encourage them to do cleanup before they do their migration. So before they move to the cloud or to the other server, and some just aren't ready to do it, either don't want to, so they actually do the cleanup after they've moved it. So that this is really for that phase. So hopefully you've done this in that third step, and you don't have to do phase 2. But if that's the case, it's just another opportunity to do some cleanup. So it would be the same thing, looking at what's being used, what's not being used. And figuring out how to
Kind of optimize from there.
yeah, so figure out what's being used and what's not being used. Okay.
Okay. So optimize, step 6. What are we looking at here? This looks like one of our fabulous reports that you can get out of 360 Eyes.
Right. So yeah, once you've gotten all your content over, you want to be able to, you want to ensure that your everything's optimized, your Webby reports, your universes. You don't have a lot of content out there that might be obsolete if you find there are issues. It doesn't make sense to correct issues where maybe no one's using. If maybe you have issues with some of your universe objects, but they're not on any report. So why would you even go about fixing those? So I can show a quick report to kind of show what that looks like. So unused universe objects, so being able to see, what's being used, what's not being used. So this lists all of the universes in my environment, the number of objects in those universes, and how many are used. So I could have this usage ratio, and then the details will literally show me each object and where it's used. So this database ID object, not used in any report. So any of the reports in my environment, none of them use that object. Database name is used in 6 different reports in my environment. So it's, kind of gives you the opportunity. Maybe you want to do some cleanup. If these are, if you're moving to another database platform, some of these aren't working, makes sense to clean those up. So that's part of the optimize phase. Also making sure that you have, you know, Webby reports that perform well is also part of this phase. We do have a session later today, I believe it's at 3 o'clock, that we go into in-depth. We are showing the top 10 uh, tips for Webby performance. So that might be of use. So we're not going to go into that right now, but being able to kind of figure out where your queries may be running slow, why your reports might be running slow, and how to identify some reports that were built that aren't necessarily following best practices. So that's what is at that stage, at the step 6.
Right. All right. Step 7, assure quality, and this is where one of it seemed like our customer base out there, your biggest pain was doing the actual regression testing, making sure you're putting out accurate information. It looks the same as it did, before that you did your upgrade or migration. So here we've got a quick example of what 360 bind would look like, showing you your before and after. Maybe Pauline, can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so 360 bind allows you to schedule Webby Crystal documents and analysis for Office documents. You schedule them and do a comparison before and after. So, before in 4.2 compared to 4.3, or on the cloud compared to on-prem. It'll do performance comparison, it'll do data comparison. You choose what you want to compare. So in this example, say this on the left-hand side was before, this is 4.2, right-hand side 4.3. So I see my title's different, it's highlighted in that peach color. Anywhere you look at the content, where the data is different, so under this revenue column, dresses there is shown in black on the left, and on the right the text in blue. So you can pick and choose. If you don't care, maybe the font style changes, the color, maybe you don't care about that, you don't have to compare that. You can even compare the graphs. So this automates your regression testing. It takes the manual work out of regression testing. Oftentimes this is the longest part of my migration, because it takes so much time, and a lot of times it gets pushed off, and you want your users to be confident of the data. And we're going to go into, we have a session today where we go into depth in 360 bind. So if you want to see that in action, join us for that
Right.
session. That's
Yep.
at noon Eastern time. That'll be Lisa and I again.
Yep.
So we'll show you that in depth. But yeah, this is definitely a important step in the process to make sure you're getting the expected results with your
Yeah.
reports.
And a big majority of our customers, I think it's up to like 95% of our customers, find regressions using bind as part of their migration solution. So we're definitely doing another great session on that today, the third one, I think, is what we're scheduled for that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we have next? Analyzing the impact. So this is where you're going to take maybe those regressions that you found in bind. You found some of your issues, calculation engine changes or whatever, and you want to see how widely that has impacted your report environment. So you would now do an impact analysis report. And Pauline, I would say this is probably one of our most frequently used reports by customers. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely in eyes. A lot of the reports are in eyes are really useful, but they're useful sometimes at points in time. Whereas I talk to a lot of customers that say, they use this report all the time, and we have a couple different ones. I'll show this. I'll show example of this report, but this will allow you to say, okay, I want to know, like, so say during your regression testing, you found an issue with a universe object. You want to know where is that object used in your other reports. So here's a report. It allows me to filter on any universe object. So in this case, it's snapshot ID. Um, and I can say, okay, this is the list. These are the documents that the path that they are in and the document names. These are all the documents that are affected that use that universe object that are affected. Some of the other reports, I mean, it may not be a universe object. It may be a database table. Maybe you want to where a certain SQL is used in the report. So this impact analysis we extract all the SQL from your reports, and you can identify, okay, where is that table used in my reports? What's going to be impacted by this regression? And same thing with report variables. So all of these reports are available. They're already built. You just pass in what you're searching for, and you can find what's going to be impacted by those issues.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Back to
Up next. Step 9, going live. So now is the time to go live with what you've done. You've done your backup, your cleanup, your testing, making sure everything looks good. What are we going to do here, Pauline? How are we going to
yeah.
help
So
this?
yeah. So oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is the stage where you've moved all your content. You've been testing in your new environment. Maybe it's on the cloud or your different new platform. But in the meantime, most people don't freeze production. So your production environment's still running, users are still creating reports, instances. So how are you going to get that content then over to the upgraded environment so they're in sync so then you can go live? Some of our customers will use this, there's a Delta promotion option. So they'll run this on a daily basis, so they keep the environments in sync. So, Webby report gets created, maybe new users get created, that gets moved to that new great environment. So they stay in sync. Some do it more, okay, the day before we'll get them in sync. But this is really that step to ensure that you've got everything that you need over in the new environment. And the 360 Plus promotion will help with that.
Our final step, this is comply. So I guess this is a good time where you may review your security and regulatory requirements. Pauline, is that what we mean by comply here?
Yeah. If there are any, regulatory requirements, maybe you have to ensure that, that you've set up security properly. 360 View will document that security. With eyes, you can even compare the security from the old environment to the new to see, make sure everything's been applied correctly, folder access, universe access has been applied correctly. This is also, going forward, you want to maintain your environment. Don't let it get out of control. If you found that it, was growing over time, keeping the, your whatever you put in place as far as, okay, anything that hasn't been run in a certain amount of time, we're going to remove. Implementing a DR plan, so 360 Plus can be used for that. And there was a question from Larry about the DR plan. So yeah, promotion is another way to do DR. So there's the information. We do have a session later on today that Yasmin is doing about DR, and that will kind of go into more depth into how you can use 360 Plus for DR. But yeah, promotion is one kind of way you can do DR, or use that rollback option that's available in 360 Plus. So hopefully I answered your question. But yeah, this is just really keeping your environment, documenting it if you want to implement versioning, so that when changes are made, you can trace back who made the changes, what was made, and audit those changes.
right? So it's basically you're answering your questions, who's got access to what, when, where, and why.
Yes, correct. Yep. Yep. Okay, so that was that kind of it's let me show this real quick. So these were all the steps that we went through, each one of them different solutions in the 360 suite. Um, most of these are things that, we recommend just from working with a lot of customers and how they've been able to successfully upgrade or migrate to the cloud, and what worked best in those processes.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more poll from us. So this is basically what brought you here today. What's your interest level in this webinar topic? And this, you're just increasing your knowledge. Send me more information. You don't have immediate needs, would like a demo. You're planning a project, would like to schedule a demo. Are you in the middle of something and you would like to get some trial keys now? So I'd love to know kind of what brought you here, what was interesting about this particular webinar. Get some answers.
Yeah, we'll give everybody about a minute to
Yeah.
answer, and we'll get to some questions as well once we get that answered. Okay, we'll give it about 10 more seconds for everybody to reply. Okay, so I'm going to close that. Thank you for answering, and then we'll get to let Lisa talk
Yeah.
about the value.
Yeah, so this is, the overall value of utilizing our solutions for your upgrades and migrations. This is where we find where it fits with your administrator, your business objects administrator, that you can bulk update a lot of the manual tasks. And even moving forward, utilizing the solutions, you can continue to keep a clean and lean environment. So you won't use the solutions just the one time during your upgrades. You're going to continue to use them as well. When stuff starts getting boring out of control, you've got a way to do your running your reports with eyes and cleaning it up again. Maybe your BI manager. It's going to help with reducing your costs and timelines. And again, ability to assess and plan and monitor. And definitely when you're automating any of your manual processes, such as the regression testing, you have a better view of how long this timeline will be. You can anticipate how much time it's going to be. For your auditor, documenting your historical changes, account and user recertification. So again, that's for any of your compliance type of issues you may have to do reporting on. And for your business, faster implementation of your new versions, and get rid of those regressions and the manual testing, especially if you have your business users do that manual testing. They've got to print out those reports side by side, and or look at two on a screen and have your human eye try and determine what the problems are. And then your overall value, of course, is your cost reduction and then automation. Anything to make stuff faster and better, it's always good. So that's that.
Right. Yeah, so we're going to get to some questions now. So one of the questions, I see a question about regression testing, and it looks like, so it says, so 90% of the customers may experience data integrity issues from the 4.3 upgrade. I don't know where that question came from, but I think it was that maybe on our poll that we did as to where the
Kind of
challenge.
regression testing, and I think it was more, around like, because I made that statement that 95% of our customers who use Bind will find some kind of regression, right? They'll find with the data,
Got
right? So
it.
then, yeah, so this goes to your data integrity,
Right.
during migration. So as Bruno
Yeah.
always says, like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So
Right, right. And yeah, and since we don't, yeah, since 4.3 hasn't been released yet, I know we've been beta testing it. So I haven't heard if if we've done any of the buying comparisons to see if there were any regressions. Um, I would always anticipate some, but again, it's on a case by case. If maybe it's a certain variable syntax that doesn't work any longer, if you're not using that in your reports, you might not be impacted. So yeah, it's hard to know. So but there's always a potential for any regressions when you apply an update, whether it's to business objects or database, whatever the case may be. Um, that's kind of remains to be seen when when 4.3 comes out and customers start upgrading. Um,
I guess it's not
yes,
very often that you don't find something, right? You're always going to
yeah,
find something.
you always find, yeah, unfortunately, you always find something.
Right, you
Uh,
always find something. It's stuff that your human eye is not going to necessarily detect or see. If you're
mhm.
on page 54 of report number 39, of your manual testing, you're just going to start skimming through it and maybe not get the best information back.
Right, right. Yeah, so then there's a question about whether 360 versioning requires any steps in the IDT. So yes, we do have versioning within IDT. So you can actually version your universes directly in the information design tool. So this was actually introduced as long as you're on 4.2 SP7, you can use that if you have 360 verse for versioning. You can also version within 360, but it's a nice feature to be able to do that within the actual client tool. Same thing with Webby. You can actually version your Webbies within Webby rather than doing it from within 360. So that's a nice feature. We have an extension that allows for that. Okay, so a question about what does 360 Eyes give me that BIPST does not? So is that the BI, is that the tool that Business Objects delivers? Um, I think that's what that's referring to, the platform. So there's a tool within I believe that's what you're referring to, that extracts some information about the CMS. So it's going to give you, your users. It'll give you information about the inventory of your environment, but it's not going to extract the SQL from your reports, the objects that are going to be used on reports. It's also when you're running that tool, you're hitting your CMS directly. So it's definitely not recommended to run that when users are on the system. Because you're querying the CMS, whereas 360 Eyes, most of our customers run those jobs over the weekend or in the evening. So then when they're reporting off that data in 360 Eyes, they're running against the 360 Eyes database. They're not hitting the CMS directly when doing that analysis. 360 Eyes also gives you snapshots at points in time. So I can see those trends. So I can say, okay, I want to look at my snapshot from earlier this year compared to my snapshots now. How are my documents increasing? Where are my users increasing? It also Eyes combines the audit information with the CMS and file store information, so you have a full picture of usage, non-usage. So yeah, that's tool that is being asked about wouldn't give you that. You can definitely get some basic counts and documents and that kind of thing from that tool, but it's not going to allow you to do some real detailed analysis and of your business objects environment. So
And our
hopefully that.
next session should be covering that too, right, Pauline? I think it would be a good one to go through. I think that's the get deep insights into your SAP Business Objects environment and data services by leveraging metadata.
Mhm. Okay.
So
Yep. Yeah.
also
That's yeah.
I was going to say another quick note for any of those of you who are eager to get your hands on our software too, put your name and number in the chat. We do have a very busy calendar coming up, but if you do want to do a POC or trial, give us your name and number and we'll reach out to you. But please put it right in the chat box here. Do we have any
Yeah.
more next questions
Yeah, we
here?
have a couple more. Yeah, so what's the recommended frequency of creating snapshots in 360 eyes? So that's going to depend on your environment, how frequently it's changing. So I typically recommend at least weekly, so that you're capturing all the new information. We do have customers that use it for the CMS information, looking at schedules and failed schedules, and so they'll run that a lot more frequently. The CMS job, so it really depends on what you're using the data for, and how frequently your content's changing. Okay, and then there's a question about the metadata. Can 360 extract the objects used and variables created in a Webby document? Yes, definitely. That is definitely one of the, how do I get out of here? I'm in my, okay. Yeah, so yeah, I can show, hopefully I'm still connected here. Yeah, there is a report documentation report that will show all of that in detail. So it'll show these are all the, so this first table, these are all the objects in my query. So the result class, the result name, so these are all those objects, these are all the filters, these are all the variables, and it'll extract all that information, and it'll show you whether they're used or not. So here, these are, so this object's used 6 times, 2 times, and then these last few, they're not even on the report. So maybe you can pull them out of the query if you want. And then same thing with these variables. And we're going to talk about this in more detail in the top 10 Webby tips. But yeah, these, you see the variables and you see some of them aren't even being used. Those definitely impact performance. So it'll give you all that information about usage on your Webby reports.